Hello?
Hi.
Are you coming to the happy hour? I need to vent.
I'm still at the office.
Oh my god, are you trying to be CEO or something?
Yeah.
You'll get there, but I'll see you at happy hour. Hello, everyone. Today's guest is someone who truly understands the digital landscape, Alex Abel. She has built an impressive resume with roles at major platforms and companies like Sephora, Twitter, LinkedIn, and now TikTok, where she works in brand partnerships. But Alex doesn't stop at her 9 to 5. She's also a content creator, calling herself your millennial big sis, with content covering everything from career advice and life in NYC to building confidence.
We're pulling back the curtain on her experiences at top companies with real talk on growing and evolving both professionally and personally. So let's get into it. So, Alex, tell us a little bit about your career trajectory. Kind of start from like your very first job or one that was like very like defining of your career now.
Well, first off, you guys make me sound so legit. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I started out in San Francisco. I'm from the Bay Area and I grew up in Marin County, which is right over the Golden Gate Bridge. So I was always really exposed to the tech world, Silicon Valley from a really early age. I went to the University of Colorado and I actually studied broadcast journalism. I really wanted to be on TV, like an Aaron Andrews sports kind of broadcaster. And when I graduated from CU Boulder, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to move to like a really small market like Nebraska and be like covering high school hockey. And I don't know if I want to do that. Like I want to move back to the big city. I want to be with my friends and family. So I took a job. Actually, my first job out of college was a talent agent, which kind of felt a little bit random, but I used to be kind of like a kid talent when I was growing up there. So I was like, you know what, this sounds cool. It's a guaranteed job. I started working 2 weeks after I graduated. When I got back to San Francisco and saw all my friends in tech and kind of the lifestyle that they were creating, working at companies like DoorDash, Expensify, Facebook at the time, I was like, I got to get in tech. Like, what am I doing? Working in the agency, talent agency life. It's just very, very different. And I think if you're very passionate about it, it can definitely work. So I wasn't. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to pivot into tech. And I actually got my first job in tech at a startup called Pinrose. It was a super cool concept. It was an e-commerce startup founded by 2 women. They went to Stanford Business School and they were just like these badass women who basically created this company that out of nothing and eventually got bought into Sephora and Nordstrom, which was a really cool experience to be online and then be taken into, an in-person shopping experience with these major retailers. And we were part of that launch. And it was really cool to kind of just see how a startup worked and operated. I lasted there probably about a year because there was like 5 of us. And I feel like a year in startup life is like 7, dog years. After that, I had a couple stints in beauty at Sephora for a little bit and then Marc Jacobs Beauty. But I was like, I want to be in tech. So I got a job at Twitter, which was definitely the defining role for me. Like taking this job at Twitter definitely changed my life because it opened up just the plethora of the tech world. I had that name recognition and it was really funny because it was actually like an SDR job. So I was like 25 at the time. And I was like, I feel like I'm a little bit too old to be an SDR, but I really wanted to get in tech. So I just took that leap. My boyfriend at the time was like, no, you shouldn't do it. You should take this other job. It's a better title. And I was like, I'm not going to listen to you. And thank God I didn't. We ended up breaking up a little bit after that, for obvious reasons. I'm like, you're an idiot. But no, I really say like Twitter was like the defining moment in my career that really changed it all for me. Because then after Twitter, I was an SDR for a couple months and then they reorged and I just like automatically became an account manager, hybrid like account manager AE role, which was super cool. And I was working with brands like Jose Cuervo, Michael Kors. Actually, Michael Kors was the first brand working with me at Twitter that did like a live streaming with Twitter during New York Fashion Week, which was like super cool at the time. After Twitter, I then went to LinkedIn and became a client solutions manager on the tech vertical for enterprise tech, which was great. Learned a lot about like B2B marketing there and then worked my way up the ladder at LinkedIn, then became like a senior account manager, then became an AE and moved to New York with LinkedIn. And then after about like 6.5 years at LinkedIn, I was like, you know what, it's time for me to go. And then that's kind of how I landed at TikTok, working in brand partnerships there.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. You've had such a Great career, and I love to hear about your experience starting at Twitter. How have you felt with like Twitter switching to X? Has that been weird since you got your career started there?
It's really sad because Twitter, the Bluebird, they had such like a strong brand recognition in the
Yeah.
market. Everybody knew them. That's something that's really hard to create as a brand is, that brand recognition, that symbol of that little bluebird. You don't have to say the name, you know exactly what it is. And I think the basis of Twitter too is connecting people and it's what's happening. And I just feel like, unfortunately, I think it's lost its lust a little bit. I don't
Yeah.
think, I think people are gravitating away from the platform, especially now with like Elon being so involved. And it's kind of sad, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but it was so fun to work there at the time. And it really was such a cool, like everything that you dream about tech being, it was. And there were some great people too that I met like along the way there.
Was it difficult for you to find this job at Twitter? Because I know when you're in a certain industry, it can be hard to kind of transfer somewhere else where maybe you don't have as many connections.
Yeah, I think I was very lucky. Like I think, and that's I think a common occurrence when you're starting off. And even as you get older, like I think it's like right time, right place, and a little bit of luck. Obviously, you have to apply, your resume has to be standing out, and you have to get through the interview process. I had applied to Twitter actually a couple times before and didn't get interviews. And I had like referrals for those ones, which was so funny. Then I saw this role and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to apply. I'm not going to ask anybody to refer me. I'm just going to go for it. And of course, it's like the role that you get. And that actually happened
Oh
with
my
TikTok
gosh, I
too.
love
Like
that.
a couple people referred me to TikTok before I actually got this job there. And this job that I got, no one referred me. It was just like luck that it was like right time, right place. And my resume stood out to whoever the hiring manager, was at the time. So I do think it was definitely lucky. I always recommend like leveraging your network and really leveraging like the people around you and like kind of your second degree connections in some capacity. But then sometimes I just think it is luck and it's like timing.
Yeah, I love that. So, from all of these experiences, was there ever a time where you feel like you did stay maybe in a position for too long? And if so, what advice do you have for others that might feel like they're in that place?
Yeah, definitely. I think honestly, I probably should have left LinkedIn a year earlier, like a year sooner. I do believe like LinkedIn is it's such a great company. Like it's so comfortable. You have a great work-life balance. I loved so many of the people that I worked with. But I think the problem for me in LinkedIn, and I also just grew my career so much there. So I had like a very, I was like, oh, this is like breaking up with someone. I also moved to New York with LinkedIn. So I had like that connection too. I think for me, what was hard was the connection to B2B marketing, also like the line of products that I was working on. So it was very much SaaS products, tech, hardcore tech products like ETL, METL, digital transformation, data migration. And so for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm marketing to engineers and like software developers and transparently, that's just like not a passion of mine. So I think I had a hard time connecting to what clients I was working with and the products I was trying to market. And, I think when you also are at a company for so long, like 6.5 years is a long time, especially in tech, I do think you get a little complacent. Like, I think I was getting a little bored, but I love the people that I worked with and I love the company. So it was like, oh, such a hard like decision to go. But I think I probably should have left like a year sooner.
Makes sense. I mean, it's hard when you feel like you kind of stopped growing in a position or you stopped learning.
Yeah.
And to balance that with like, "Oh, but I love my coworkers. I have such a great like work-life balance. I like everything is perfect, but like I just feel like I'm in this weird rut." Have you ever like felt like you're in this rut, but you want to stay at the company and you want to say like, I think I should get a promotion or get a raise? Like, do you have any advice for how you would go about asking for something like that?
It's so hard because I think for when you're in a rut, I think typically people can kind of pick up on it. And so
Yeah.
I think you have to really I think you have to be really deliberate. I'm like, okay, what is like it doesn't have to be like a 5-year plan, but like, what do I want for myself in the next year, 2 years, and then 3 years? Like, because typically it can take like 6 to 12 months to get a promotion.
Yeah.
That's on the quick side too. Like typically, like I know people at LinkedIn, it takes like a year and a half, 2.5 years
Right.
to get promoted. And so it's like, okay, when you have grown to a certain level, I think you have to think to yourself, do I want to go into management? Do I want to pivot to maybe a different team? Will that help like reignite my spark here? Or should I try to look externally and see what else is out there? I just think it's kind of like up to you in deciding like what do I want my like 1 to 3 year plan to look like, and how much like energy do you want to devote to getting promoted or getting like a title change. Because at places like LinkedIn, at TikTok, like you have to really lay out the business case. You have to be very vocal about what you're doing. You have to be working on side projects. You have to really build your internal brand for then your manager to take your case to that leadership table and be like, we should promote Alex Abel because of X, Y, and Z that she's done over the last 12 months. So I think you have to ask yourself honestly, like, do you have the energy to do that? Because it's okay if you don't. But then I think if you don't, it's time to probably move on and start looking at the next thing, because it takes so much like dedication to like in corporate America to really get like those increases and the title bumps.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation recently with a fellow coworker about how it's really important, like wherever you work, it's more so about liking your manager and respecting your manager than the company sometimes, because like having a good manager is what can help you grow. And I feel like I've really felt that in my career when you just have a manager that you can really communicate with and tell them like where you're at, because sometimes they just want to help support you. And I think that is so important, like when you are finding a job or like shifting in a career, to just to make sure you find the right manager, which is easier said than done, but it's and you can and it's important though to go through maybe some not so good managers, honestly, because it can help build you up a little bit. But once you do have like a good manager, you can set that as a bound, or like what's the word,
Standard, kind of.
yeah, like a standard. And then when it comes time to ask for raises, promotions, anything like that, I mean, your manager's the one that really roots for you, and they're the ones that can help you get that. Well, it depends if you're somewhere big or small, or a startup is a whole different story. But I think that is so important. Like, if you really like your manager.
I literally just made, like, before we hopped on, I literally just made a TikTok about what to do if you don't get along with your manager, because I have had some amazing managers and I've had some managers that I'm like, okay, I'm not really feeling this. So I'm totally like, I think your manager can literally, they make your experience. They make it either great or they make it a pain in the ass. And I think people don't leave their companies, they leave their managers. So that's something to also
Yeah.
really like, think about. And I think, at a certain point too, it's like your manager's the one that's fighting for your promotion, that is leveling you up to their director or their leadership team. So it's like, if they don't have your back, if they don't believe in you, if they think that, they're not seeing your value, then you're kind of like in a bad position. And so I think too, you have to like evaluate like, okay, can I come back from this, or is it better for me to cut my losses and just like go somewhere that I'm valued?
I guess I associate like a toxic manager with somebody who's like a crazy micromanager a little bit. And I don't know if you've ever come into like a situation where like you had to maybe set a boundary with your manager.
Yes, I have had managers where I have had micromanagers, and it's like brutal. It tests your patience and your
I
willpower,
know.
and it really can like take a toll on your mental health. And so I think when you come across a manager that's a micromanager, you typically find out like, pretty quickly what the situation is. And I think managers micromanage because they almost like don't trust themselves. I think that they have a hard time like trusting people and also like letting go and trusting themselves. And I think you can't take it personally, which is so hard to do. I think that's like my number one advice with anyone that gets micromanaged and feels like they aren't being, because I feel like you get micromanaged because you feel like you're not doing a good enough job. You feel like you're getting micromanaged because they don't trust you. You feel like you're getting micromanaged because you're not smart enough and you're not putting enough effort. And I feel like probably for the majority of people, they are doing that. They are putting in the effort. But there's something I think internally with micromanagers that just, you can't like take it personally. You have to be like, it's a reflection of them and not a reflection of me. And all you can really do is just like really document and be like, keep a really clean track record, keep a really clear schedule and timeline of all the projects, all the deliverables, all the communication. Because at the end of the day, it's like, if you have those data points and you have all of the outputs that you have done, it's a really hard case for a micromanager to then be like, well, actually, and they might find a way to do that, but at least you can be like, I really tried to cover all my bases. And hopefully you can mitigate any kind of drama. But I mean, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to deal with.
That reminds me of something I've always tried to do at any job is it's so important to keep a running list of like accomplishments, small or large, because it really helps. Like even when you're preparing for interviews, writing your resume, talking points for whatever, like it's so important just to have that documented, like a running list of things you're proud of in your career so you can look back to, and because you might forget you do so much at work and so it's
So
hard to remember.
much. I always think it's a really good idea to have like a brag book per quarter and just like write down like your highlights and like, because to your point, you're gonna forget it. And like when your annual review comes around, you're gonna be like, what the hell did I do this year?
Yeah.
So if you can like have the bullet points from like I just have like a little Excel or like a yeah like a Google spreadsheet and I have it just labeled. It can be like not that pretty either. I mean, you can obviously make it pretty, but it just helps because then you can look back and be like, oh, I did do that. I did do this.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I did like save the world this year. Thank you. So
I
making
love the title brag book.
yeah, and then you just like plug and play too for your reviews. It's so much easier.
So within your roles, do you have some advice or any tips that like have helped you build some of the credibility internally and just like earn respect from your other coworkers?
It's like a culture thing. Like, right, people are going to want to spend time with people that they feel connected to, that they vibe with. So I think all the places that I've worked have like pretty similar cultures of like really cool people, like very kind of similar, not similar backgrounds, but like similar attitudes, similar mindsets. And maybe that's just like me being in brand partnerships and sales for the last like 10 years. But I think what makes you stand out with your peers is not trying to be the best all the time. Like, I think what really irks people is like, kind of like the brown noser, the one that's like always trying to one up people, the one that's always kind of like in your face. I think if you can have moments where you stand out and you look like a natural leader, that makes people want to gravitate towards you more than like being the overly obnoxious. And we all have those people, like, I feel like in our like kind of like teams or orgs where they're like just like the loudest person in the room, but making like the least amount of impact. We're just kind of like fake. And I feel like people can really sift through that, especially if you have like a good like social IQ. I think projects that my coworkers have like that have made me stand out. I really do think like the New York Fashion Week Michael Kors live stream project that I worked on was like a really big hit because and Jack Dorsey talked about it in one of our all hands, which was really awesome. I was honestly on culture council at LinkedIn, so I would like do like a bar cart every month for people when pre-COVID days. I would try to be like very much like team culture type of girl. And at TikTok, I just did a really big immersion day with the Applebee's team in LA, and like the CEO of Applebee's came, and there was like a 5-hour immersion day. So I think that really like stood out to people just because it was such a huge like cross collaboration with our cross functional partners. The CEO, publicly traded company was there. So that was definitely like a standout moment too recently at TikTok.
Really
That's
cool.
awesome. I think another thing, I guess, kind of going off of this, like confidence building, Madeline and I always talk about, taking that little extra time to get ready in the morning for work and dressing up a little bit nicer than you maybe want to go to the office, having your nails done, just these little things that like they really do go a long way. I don't know if you have any like hacks or anything in that realm.
Okay, listen, I'm like, you don't need to do like a full glam every time you go into the office. Like,
Yeah.
it's not Miss America, but I do think, and that's exhausting also. I'm like,
No,
I got,
Yeah,
totally.
agreed.
but I do think the days you go into the office, what I do, and like, I don't have to do all three, like hair, makeup, and outfit. Sometimes we'll just do a cute outfit. And like, I'll wear, I'm not wearing any makeup right now. My hair is like in a little claw clip, but I had like a cute little trendy outfit on. And I'm like, that for me on a Monday was great. Like, that was perfect. I think for big meetings, I do all three. I am like glam, new outfit, hair, nails, makeup. And to me, it's like just makes me feel the best. It makes me feel super confident. I walk in not worrying an ounce about how I look. And it also just makes me show up better as like a presenter, my stage presence. Because at the end of the day, it's not like, you're putting on a show, but you kind of are. And I think when people show up in a way that's engaging and charismatic and confident, you're more fun to listen to. And you can tell when people are tuning out from people. And it's not because they look bad, but like maybe it's just they don't feel confident that day. So if you can kind of mitigate anything that could hurt your confidence by putting on a cute outfit, doing your hair, like I do that just so I can show up and mitigate any kind of issue of maybe not feeling my best. So that's kind of like my POV on that. And if it's just a regular day, then just do one out of the three and you're going to feel, good in at least that kind of way.
Yeah, because I think for me, there was actually a period of time in my career where I really didn't pay attention to those things going to work. And like I can recall it. I just remember not feeling super confident. And there was a day I promised myself I was just gonna get dressed in the morning, spend a little extra time. And it just really helps you feel like more refreshed. Like you said, in meetings, it's super important. Like you are putting on a show of some sort. And I don't know, I just feel like if you're going to get up in a room and talk, like if you feel good, you're going to talk better. Everything's going to be a little bit better. And it's something like I've learned over time. I always like to have my nails done or something too, or even just as long as they look okay and they don't look gross. Because people, when they're looking over my computer, like I just want to feel a little more confident.
Well, no, and it's also kind of like a reflection of how you feel about yourself, like how you treat
Yeah.
yourself. And so,
Totally.
and I think it's a subconscious thing with humans. Like it might not be right, but I do think you're more likely to be like, okay, I think this is a credible source because they look credible. They're put together. There's like this great quote in The Devil Wears Prada. Like, God, what did she say? It was like Meryl Streep said it. She was like, just because we care about like the clothes that we put on our back doesn't mean, I forget the exact quote, but it's so true. It's like you shouldn't feel ashamed for wanting to show up and look put together.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's how I kind of feel about that.
Yeah. And also, so you're also a content creator and you talk a lot about like beauty and lifestyle tips. And working at TikTok as a content creator. Can you talk a little bit about the balance of that? Because it's so hard to make content and I wish more people in the world understood. I hate how people just say, "Oh, like they're just a content creator, like anyone can take videos." But I'm like, "No, no, no. You have to figure out like the niche, content to lean into. You have to edit, you have to record it, you have to be consistent and post it." So I would love to hear like from your perspective about just like being content creator and also having, your job at TikTok.
It's so funny the amount of times that people are like, I'm just gonna like start making content. I just want to be a creator and I just want to make money. Like I'm like, it's not that easy. Like it's really it takes a lot of time. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about how easy it is. And you guys know, like doing a podcast takes so much effort, so much time. It basically is like it is a content creator. You guys, this is content. So I would say like what's been helpful for me in like being a content creator and trying to like pursue that in like a full-time capacity while also having a full-time job because I do post like a full-time creator kind of cadence. I have I'm like, I have no life. No, I do have a life, but you have to be very strategic about your time. You have to also be willing to give up maybe watching Netflix at night, maybe going to brunch on a Saturday morning. You have to kind of pick and choose a little bit wiser how you spend your time because there's only so many hours in the day. So typically what I'll do, like I have to shoot a brand deal by Wednesday. We're doing this on Monday night. So I'm like, okay, Alex, like when can you fit in shooting this video? I have drinks, so it's like you have to get really strategic with your time. So maybe it's waking up at 6 a.m. and filming that, that brand
Yeah.
deal. Get smarter when you're just out and about in your day. Like one of the best pieces of advice that I ever heard about content creating is that like anything can be content. So like if you really want to be a creator, you kind of have to be thinking with that creator cap on at all times. So whether it's walking to work and maybe getting a cute video like on the subway. I know it's like also you can't have any shame. Like embarrassment has to go out the window because you kind of have to just do whatever you whatever you feel like. And so maybe it's like getting cute B-roll on your way to work, batch creating your content and just doing a couple of videos in one day, having static images that are like in a certain folder that you can just use for like a carousel and have different concepts that you can plug and play on a night that maybe you didn't film a video and you want to put up something. So it's kind of just being like nimble with your strategy, but also having a strategy in place of how you're creating your content. And, I'll be at work sometimes and I'll go get lunch and then I'll film, a TikTok at lunch and that will be like my content for the day and it'll go well and I'll edit it on the subway home, going home from work. So it's just using your free time and your downtime smart and strategically so then you can, have the best kind of cadence and show up for your audience on a regular basis because that's definitely, it's a challenge when creating content is like, you have to be putting out, 4 videos a week at minimum.
Yeah. What I think is really awesome about you is, and I think this is really where the creator landscape is going, how, you are balancing those things and you're talking about your life at work and you're talking about the balance of that. And we're starting to see a little bit of a shift in the creator economy, like not as interested in just seeing the traditional like day in the lives where these people are just grabbing coffee, like going to a Pilates class. Like, we want to see something a little more interesting and hear about like people that have cool jobs or cool hobbies and things like that. And like you said, anything can be content and just getting that embarrassment out the door. Like you have to be a little vulnerable.
It's so funny that you said that too, because I mean, I don't know about like for you guys, like, do you guys watch just like full-time content creators day in the life anymore? Like, I know I don't.
Yeah.
It's
Not really.
yeah, it's not, it's like, okay, we get it. You got your iced matcha, you went to hot Pilates, you had lunch with your girlfriends, you filmed something after, I'm like, I've seen this a zillion times. I think audiences and people are actually craving more relatability. I think they
Yep.
want to have more inspirational content, more savable content. They want content that like helps them with their lives. Like that's how I think about like my content now. I'm like, and my day in the lives don't like when I don't have a certain like value add to my day in the lives, they don't do that good. No matter how well they're edited, no matter how like fun my day was. And I feel like I have like more of a dynamic kind of POV too, because I do work full time. But I just think unless you're Alex Earl or you're already a super famous content creator with over like 500 to a million followers, people just don't care. So I would like for anyone that wants to be a content creator that is starting out, I would say like find your niche, find what added value that you can give people and focus on that, because no one cares that you live in New York and you like ice matchas. Like they
Yeah.
just don't. So
No, yeah. I was gonna say value add is like key there. I think any tips for like people who want to be a creator, it's like really important to think about your content as something that will add value to people's life, even if that value is just making them feel a little joy or like laugh.
yeah.
This reminds me, I feel like a few weeks ago there was some girl who went on TikTok and was throwing shade at these NYC influencers, saying that they're boring and all of this. But I feel like somebody doing something that fuels people to be like, oh, wait, I actually don't care about these like random influencers, and I want people who actually are going to give me advice, make me laugh, like you said, teach me something actually like interesting to watch.
100%. I think the creator like landscape is totally changing. And I think it's actually kind of for the better because I think it's gotten so like vacuous and vain where it's like, okay, I don't know, maybe we like live in an NYC bubble, but I'm just like, I think unless, and I follow this one creator who's amazing. She's basically like a social media strategist and she's probably like my favorite creator right now because I'm like, you are so good at what you do. Her name's Julie. And it's every post that she makes is so impactful. And she talks about that. She's like, you don't want to just put up something to put something up. Like if you don't have anything like with value to say, like you probably just shouldn't say it. So
Yeah.
I really like how she's like my favorite creator right now. And she's not even like a classic creator. It's so funny. I think how like what we want to see changes and how social media has kind of evolved in that way.
Totally. I feel like it's a more of a quality, not quantity situation. But I feel like maybe some creators like find that kind of hard to do because maybe they hear like, you need to pump out 3 videos a day to stay on the algorithm and all of those unspoken, unknown rules.
Totally. I think there's a lot of pressure on people that want to be creators, but I do think that like the algorithms have changed now to really kind of gravitating towards high quality videos and especially videos that are being saved and shared. Like strong engagement videos are doing so much better in the algorithm. So I think it's like, okay, with that in mind, I would rather pump out, 4 good videos a week that get strong engagement than 6 videos a week on TikTok and like a couple of them just like don't go anywhere. So
Yeah.
I do think like the algorithms are kind of changing, which I do think is like for the best.
Since you work at TikTok, and that is like the main platform for creators, I'm like, do they talk about that behind the scenes and kind of give like tips or have sessions where you hear about like where some trends are happening and
Yes, they act. I mean, listen, I wish they like would tell me like the secret sauce and like tell me how to, just blow up overnight. They don't give you like that kind of they don't give you that insight or detail, but we definitely do like creator workshops, like the immersion day that I just held. Like we went over best practices, how to leverage trends, what like there's also certain like levels of trends. Like we have like the demure trend, which lasted a couple weeks. Then you have the day in the life trend that's been a little bit more permanent, but now has lost a little bit more value in terms of like the impact that it has. And then you have trends that are so quick. Like what's a good one? Like right now, the no trend. I don't know if you've seen that. It also is so funny, like what trends you might see versus like what trends I might see.
Right.
So we talk to brands on like how you can tap into trends in a really quick way that makes most sense for, them specifically, because each brand is different. And I do think you do need, a trend mix in your content rotation. Like I don't think every video that you produce should be a trend video. That will just never work. You have to have some originality. But I do think like leveraging them when it makes sense for you and your own personal brand. But at TikTok too, they will go over like how to use sound, how to like have a good strategy for your content. So it is interesting. Like I do feel like I'm learning a lot being there, but also I'm like just so obsessed with content. It's something like I didn't totally know like before going there, but they have really cool programs and really cool teams that are like super focused on that and helping brands. And they also do a really cool thing called Creators in Residence, where they'll bring creators in to like talk to brands and do like kind of like a panel interview,
I love
which
that.
is very cool. So it is a very cool place to work. They have like a whole studio production room. So it's very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And at TikTok, you work in brand partnerships. What does that like all entail?
Yes. So I work in brand partnerships on the dining vertical specifically. So I work with Applebee's, IHOP, and HelloFresh currently. That's like my main book of business. And we're really like they're a strategic marketing partner on their paid side of the house. So any large advertising activations that they're doing throughout the year, like we're working hand in hand with them. We work hand in hand with like their measurement studies that they're doing. So a lot of brands will want to have brand lift studies attached to their marketing campaigns to really kind of showcase the value that their advertising dollars are making for the overall brand. We'll do conversion lift studies. We'll do in-market studies, which showcases like in-store foot traffic. So for Applebee's, they want to see, okay, is my advertising dollars and I'm putting, on the platform really impacting the actual sales of the company, so we can track that through a third-party measurement partner. And then we'll help them with like creative and big tentpole moments. I think the really cool thing about TikTok versus like LinkedIn is TikTok is a very cultural place. Like people are coming on the platform to talk about culture. The Met Gala is, I think, tonight. So that's going to be a whole like big, tentpole moment. So we have really large advertising activations around these big moments in culture. So that's really fun to kind of like tie in with the brands and where it makes sense for them. And I just talked a lot about the NFL with Applebee's, because Applebee's is an NFL sponsor, or Applebee's is an NFL sponsor of the NFL. So how can we best leverage like their relationship with the NFL and help them capitalize on TikTok with that kind of like joint partnership, just because obviously there's always so much kind of conversation around the NFL on the platform. So it's really cool because you get to be such like a third party arm of their marketing team. And help them kind of see success on the platform from a business perspective.
I know a lot of companies normally use like advertising agencies to run their digital ads. Do you guys work with the company directly, or you work with the company and their agency?
So every client's kind of different, but you are correct. Like some big companies will have agencies. Sometimes we'll have like 4 agencies. So it's kind of navigating every client with how they operate. Like HelloFresh doesn't really have a social agency running their paid media, but Applebee's has like 3. So you kind of have to work. And then there's creative agencies involved. So you have to really kind of like navigate the ecosystem of whatever your client is doing. But working with agencies is definitely something that you would do in this role, and knowing how to navigate, those partnerships is a skill in its own, because agency life is crazy. Like the agency ecosystem is nuts. You definitely get exposed to that when you are in like a sales or brand partnerships role.
I'm actually, going through a very big transformation in my career. I actually just quit my job.
You did?
I absolutely loved my company, and my managers, my coworkers, like everything was really right. It was just, I just had some realization, like, okay, I need to try something new. Like I'm ready for something new. And I also needed a little bit of time to figure that out because I've been like hustling for years. And so, but it was like the scariest thing I've probably ever done was like resigning. It's so hard to tell your manager, like it was so emotional.
It is so emotional. Like, well, one,
Yeah.
congratulations. I think
Thanks.
that's really exciting. I think whatever path happens next will be like, it'll be right for you, and the universe will kind of put you in the right direction. I think it is like saying goodbye to almost like a relationship. It's like almost like a breakup, especially
It really
if
is.
this was your
Yeah.
first job out of college. I'm not sure if it was,
Yeah.
but especially the first job out of college is pretty hard when you've been there for a while and you have like such close ties to it. And it's kind of the only thing that you've known. I think that can be like the hardest thing. Or if it's been somewhere like a LinkedIn where you were there for like 6.5 years, like I still get sad when I like walk by the Empire State Building. That's where the LinkedIn office is. And I look up and I'm like, oh, but I do think that lasts momentarily. Like I think once you're 6 months into your next thing, it's like kind of like a breakup in the same way. Like, yes,
Yeah.
it's sad, but then you kind of get farther and farther and farther away from it. And it kind of just becomes like a thing that you did.
Yeah.
You kind of like disassociate after a few months. You mourn it in its own way, and then you kind of begin to move on with your life because you don't really have any other, you're not going to like sit in that forever, but it definitely is sad. And I think that there will be the coworkers that you stay in touch with that are actually like your genuine friends. And then there will be the coworkers where it's like your life kind of just moves apart from each other, which is totally normal, even if you were like the best of friends. And I've been at coworkers' weddings, and I don't think I would like invite them to my own wedding now. And that's okay. I think that's just like the evolution of life. And it's hard to keep up with everybody, especially if you're not in the capacity where you're talking and seeing them day in and day out. And it's also sometimes hard not to like have second guesses. Like, when I left LinkedIn, I was like, oh, is this like the right thing to do? Like, should I have done this? And you kind of like second guess yourself. But I also think that's normal because you've made a big life decision. But I do think you have to remember all the reasons why you're also doing it and like remind yourself, this was the right move. It's time to like move forward into the next thing. So, it's like a relationship, honestly, like a lot of like similarities. So.
No, it really does have a lot of similarities. And it's funny because like one of my managers, it was new to my company and she had recently quit her job to start here. And like when I told her, she was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm here for you because I just had to go through the same thing. And she was like, it is so emotional. But I think it just shows the most important thing about your career and work is the power of relationships, because like I have formed such strong relationships with these people, and like we talked about earlier, just becoming respected and gaining respect from your employees. Like every single one of them just offered a helping hand and was like, seriously, if you need anything, referrals, help with whatever. And I think that was like super telling and awesome, and it just shows like you never know where you will end up in your career. And a lot of times the people that you've worked with in the past are the ones that kind of like help you move forward. And work is such a big part of life. You're at work most of your week, and that's just crazy to think about. And that's why I think it is so important to listen to your gut sometimes and be somewhere that you really feel right about, or move on to the next step when you're ready.
Totally. I think it's such a big part of your identity. You start to identify with working at a LinkedIn, or like like that becomes like a part of your identity. And when that goes away, you kind of have to like rebuild who you are and kind of like remember that without where you worked, especially if it's been for a while. And I do think it showcases like the power of relationships. And always, I know sometimes depending on like a situation, maybe you don't like your manager, or maybe you don't like X, Y, and Z, but like leaving on a good note and not burning bridges, because like New York's a small place, tech's a small place, like advertising's a small place. Like you just never know who the next hiring manager will be, and like maybe who they know. And so that is like one of my biggest like learnings is like you just never know who the next person that you will work for knows, and you don't want to have like a bad reputation.
Talking about the power of relationships at work, have you ever had any experience with inner office romances or anything, or any advice for that if that happens to someone?
It's so funny that you say this. I have at LinkedIn, I had like a little office romance, but I ended up, so it's kind of crazy. I ended up kind of like cheating on my ex-boyfriend with a coworker who was also had a girlfriend. And I was like, oh my God, I have to break up with like this was like the sign. I was like, I have to break up with like my boyfriend at the time. I was like, this is just like not right. Like this is bad. And then I found out like, months later, like he would like do this with a lot of girls, which was like gross. Anyways, after like we had our little fling, he proposed to his girlfriend, his now wife, like
No way.
like 2 months later. And they're married now. And I just think that's crazy. I obviously like would never say anything. Like they're
Yeah.
he actually, yeah. So it created definitely some like drama and tension, but then at the end of the day, like I kind of moved on and figured, COVID ended up happening. So I kind of like didn't ever have to interact much with him after.
Yeah.
But it was definitely like a little bit of a drama. I don't know if I would recommend it because I just think typically nothing ever good comes out of it. Like it's so fun in the moment, but nothing ever really good comes out of it. Like I know some people are like, oh, I met my wife at work, but I just feel like it's typically like the exception, not the rule. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I think like if you have to get out of your system when you're younger, whatever, go for it. Like do it for the plot. But I just don't know if it's like worth it in the end game. It's definitely like crazy times. You also have to think too if like they're your manager or if they're like if you're reporting up, that can also like I've never done that, but I can like definitely see how like that does not work out, and especially depending on your company's policies.
It's funny because I was listening to a podcast recently about a couple that did meet at work, and they were just saying how that used to be really the norm before dating apps.
Yes.
So many people did meet at work just because there weren't a ton of like they didn't have the apps back then, so it used to be more of a norm.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it was more of the norm, and now I just feel like kind of with a lot of the sexual harassment things that are in place and a lot of kind of like where society has shifted, I think it's more of a liability now than anything. So I do probably imagine it like being less common, but I definitely think it still happens. Like one of my really good friends at LinkedIn met his now girlfriend who also works at LinkedIn, but they're on totally separate teams. So I think that can work if it's like the right place, the right time, maybe separate teams. So you're not like always like interacting on a day-to-day basis. So it still happens, but maybe just like a little bit less common.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it's probably better if you're not on the same team and you're not working together every single day.
Yeah.
Because especially if it goes wrong, like you don't want to see this person all day, every day. Like that is my worst nightmare.
Worst nightmare, like the anxiety.
And off that topic, like I think what is important though is finding a significant other who's like super supportive of your career.
Yes.
So rather than meeting them at your workplace, like meeting someone outside of your workplace who is just super supportive and like cares, because it is sometimes hard to find that. A lot of other career obsessed people are just very focused on their personal careers, but like finding that person that wants to support you and also has their own drive, I think can be really important.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like for relationships, I think you both have to have like kind of like an equal skin in the game for your careers, like for a healthy, balanced relationship. Like I could not imagine dating someone who like didn't care about their career, didn't want to put in effort, especially if you're putting so much in. And it's actually funny. I met my current boyfriend walking home from work. I was like, if I didn't walk home from work this day, this would have never happened. It was like serendipity.
Wait, that's awesome. How did that even happen?
I was walking home from work one day. It was like honestly kind of cold out too. I think it was like a December day. And this is actually kind of like the funny aspect of relationships too, because I was walking down Fifth Avenue and I randomly decided to turn off Fifth because it was like chaotic. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. So I randomly turned down, I think it was like on 18th Street or something, like a total random side street. And I physically ran into him. And these two girls were walking with him, and they were my first coworkers ever out of college at that talent agency. And I was like, oh my God, Steph, Alessandro, what are you guys doing? And then I look up at him. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's like so hot. And then we all started kind of like walking for a minute, and we were all just like talking, and then he peeled off and I kept talking to my two old coworkers, and I was like, you guys, like he's like, oh yeah, like that's our coworker Charlie. So now they worked with him and we're like leaving work one day, and they're like, oh, we'll do like a group happy hour and like set something up. And then they like followed up on it. And then like I found out like months later, they like showed him my Instagram before we even had this run in. And they were like, that's her, when we were like, when we ran into each other. So it was like a very serendipitous moment, but also the power of kind of like having those old relationships that like still care about you and love you. And, I'm still friends with them today. They're amazing. So it's just kind of like a funny crazy like butterfly effect moment, you know?
Oh,
That's
cute.
awesome. So like rom-com, like meet cute.
No, literally, I'm like, that never happened. So it
That
definitely
like
was.
only happens in New York.
Oh, I swear, I'm like, that would not happen if you lived in like Omaha, I don't think. I mean, maybe it would,
Literally.
but who knows?
Who knows? Cool. Well, we can kind of like end on one last topic. I'm curious, Alex, if you have any advice for anyone who's kind of young in their career, but they might be experiencing like a little bit of burnout. How do you get over burnout so young in your career?
Yeah, I think burnout is such a real thing, especially with the pressures of living in a city like New York or LA or San Francisco. I think it happens so much to people. I think
Yes,
you
the
really have,
cities.
oh, it'll grind you down. It really will grind you down. I think like the three most important things are setting boundaries. Like you have to one set boundaries with your coworkers and like showcase them like I am logging off at 5 or 5:30. Like I'll speak to you tomorrow. And honestly, and also like honoring that to yourself, like not checking your email, not checking your Slack or Teams messages, like truly like give yourself a break. I would say is like number one most important. I think number two is like take your time off, like take your PTO, take a sick day, recharge. I think a lot of the time like people, especially like younger, don't take their PTO or time off. And I think even if it's just like a mental health day, like take the day off, go get a massage and recharge. And it'll just like help. I always love having like a fun vacation to look forward to, even if it's not like a big European vacation or like a big international vacation, but like have something planned every quarter to look forward to, whether it's just like a 3-day weekend or a little break. So then you can like have something on the horizon and like be like, I just need to get to like my trip to Palm Springs. Oh, I just need to get to like the trip to Miami. And I do really think that can help. And then the last one, I would say like if it's really bad, I mean, like some places have medical leave that you can take for like a month or 2 months. And like if your mental health is like really that impacted, like there are resources that you can leverage typically at like major companies that are really helpful for mental health. And you can have like, secure job, a secure job when you are ready to come back. So I think it kind of just depends on like the levels. And then also like stop working like at like if you stop working at 5:30, like truly try to like log off. I know it's hard sometimes and not every day is the same, but those are the rules that I have. And I have my notifications muted. My Slack messages on my phone notifications are muted because I'm like, I don't want to be checking this like a social media app, especially on the weekends or at night. So I think
Yeah.
creating boundaries and setting those kind of precedences with your coworkers, it really helps. At
Yeah.
least for me.
Yeah, I have a old coworker who always says it's just pixels on a page, and like when you work in marketing or whatever, it's so true.
So
No,
true.
I literally love that. We just say we're just selling square rectangles. Like these are just square
Wait, that's
rectangles.
so funny.
It's not
So
a
true
Square
though.
rectangles.
yeah. I'm like, we're
Oh my
not doing open
God.
heart surgery here. It can wait till
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I know.
But
Literally.
Like I had to go to the hospital recently just for like a little family emergency, and it was like I have to like tell my coworkers I have to take the day off, and then you're at the hospital and you're like, oh my God, why am I freaking out about getting this like social post out when there's literally people at the hospital? Like it's like in doctors, seeing the
yes,
doctors working. I'm like, okay,
it
it's
puts it
not
in
that big of a deal.
perspective.
Yeah. But that
Yeah.
is really good advice. Thank you so much, Alex. Like this was
This has been awesome.
amazing. Yeah, this has really truly been awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course, it was so fun. Thank you guys for having me.